The reason why we're talking about relevance and building a holistic brand rather than just focusing on digital PR is this graduation from what was link building when it started out 15, 20 years ago. It's really able to see through that manipulation and actually just wants to see authentic brands who are talking about topics relevant to what they're selling and who they're selling to. One thing I love about digital PR is that it's really scalable. So I think it is really doable for small businesses, startups to start digital PR with those sort of limited budgets. There's a lot of debate at the moment about whether digital PR needs this rebrand, because actually what we're doing as digital PRs, it is PR, like it is just PR tactics and strategy, trying to be everywhere where your audience is going to be. And I think that audience research side of it is so important. Think about what you want your business to be famous for, write down 3 core messages or themes that align with that, and then use them as a checklist before you're posting, pitching.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. My name is Jack Chambers-Ward. I am your host as always. And this week I am joined by Abi Bennetts. We're talking all about digital PR. We want to talk about brand, we talk about sentiment analysis, we talk about relevancy, and also the kind of links you should still build even if Google didn't exist. Feels like a nice little follow-up to my conversation with Amanda last week. And of course, this is the last episode before Christmas. So if you are celebrating, Merry Christmas. Hopefully you're getting some time off away from SEO and digital marketing. And even if you're not celebrating Christmas, hopefully you still get to spend some time with the people you love and doing the things you love over the next week or two anyway. This is the final episode for Christmas, but not the final episode of the year. Next week on the 29th, I'll be joined by Greg Heilers, and it's a nice little combo with this episode. We're talking about digital PR again. We're talking about reactive PR and Harrow as well. How that has evolved, how that has shifted, how AI, LLMs, and questionable business practices have shifted reactive PR and Harrow and those kind of practices in digital PR. That's coming up next week on the 29th with Greg. And then on the 5th of January, Mark Williams-Cook and I are back here in the Candour studio, recapping the biggest news stories and the important bits and pieces from 2025, and also making some predictions for 2026 as well. So stay tuned for those over the next few weeks. If you want to give me a Christmas present, I would hugely appreciate if you like this video and subscribe on YouTube, hit the notification bell as well. If you follow us on Spotify, give us a 5-star review us on Apple Podcasts, do all the kind of stuff that helps spread the word of Search with Candour. And I'd appreciate that as a Christmas present from you to me for all the hard work I've put into the podcast over the year. We have a huge plan for 2026 as well. Like I said, we're kicking things off with some predictions with Mark and I, but we also have plans to do more of those panel kind of episodes. We're going to have multiple people, brilliant SEO experts from around the industry, all talking about a hot topic or a particular thing we want to talk about that week. So stay tuned for some awesome episodes. I've even recorded some of the interviews for January in 2026 already. So stay tuned for a few more episodes there as well. In the meantime, like I said, enjoy the break. Hopefully you get to spend time doing what you love with the people you love. Merry Christmas, and I will see you next week on the 29th. But before that, here's my conversation with Abi Bennetts. If you've ever been through a website build project, you probably know the panic. You spend months designing something beautiful, approving layouts, writing copy, and then, right at the end, someone asks, wait, what about the SEO? That is exactly the scenario you want to avoid, because if you try to bolt on SEO at the end, you face the cost of things like rebuilding code or tanking the migration entirely. And that's why you need to talk to the team at Candour. You might know them from their popular podcast, Search with Candour. I mean, you probably do since you're listening to this or watching this right now, but they are also a search-first design and build agency. They don't treat search as an afterthought. It's baked in from day one. Moving to a new site isn't just a design change, it's also a data change. One wrong move with your front-end code, your redirects, or your site architecture, and you don't just lose traffic, you lose revenue. And you can wipe out years of Google trust overnight. Thankfully, Candour has renowned SEO experts who work right alongside their designers and developers to prevent that from happening. They help you avoid those nightmare migration pitfalls and, very importantly, find new opportunities for growth that other agencies miss. If you want a site that ranks as good as it looks and keeps your hard-earned traffic safe, go to withcandour.co.uk. That's withcandour.co.uk. Most great websites don't get found. Ours do. My guest this week is a digital PR consultant and director. She has been shortlisted as a rising star at the UK Search Awards and has spoken at events across the UK, including Up North, Digital PR Summit, and I had the honour of moderating their talk at Brighton SEO in April earlier this year. She is the digital PR account director at Launch. Welcome to Search with Candour, Abi Bennetts.
Wow, thank you. What an introduction. Can I get you to do intros into all my meetings like that? That was great.
Funnily enough, you're not the first person to say that. I know somebody. I'll use names. I'll call out names. Julia Panozzo, who I've had on the show before, good friend of mine, and amazing speaker, neuroscientist, neuromarketer, has used my little intro that I did for Julia as like a pre-public speaking, like hype up thing. I clipped out and sent just a little MP3 of like, here's the little hype up thing.
Oh my God, yeah. I feel like I need that whenever I'm lacking confidence in the future. I'll just listen to that hype up and I'll be good to go.
Exactly. That's always my goal, is to get it a bit hype and get you in the mood. Hopefully, like I said before we start recording, introduce you to the listeners and viewers as well. Because as I said, we already know each other. We met at Brighton. I moderated you when you spoke at Brighton in April, and you did a bloody fantastic job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a really fun experience. My first time taking to the stage. So yeah, you made things feel very comfortable introducing us all.
Oh, thanks, mate. It's an interesting one because I'm now going to be moderating and speaking at the upcoming Brighton in October, which is kind of terrifying, and it feels nice to kind of see it from one side and be able to see it from the other side. If that makes sense as well. And I think you're going to do some moderating yourself as well, right?
100%, yeah. So role reversal. I'll be moderating this time, and you'll be speaking. So yeah, it's great to be a part of either way. So I'm looking forward to it.
Exactly. And I mentioned in the little intro there that obviously you have a lot of experience in digital PR, and that is kind of what we're going to talk about this week. It's a little bit of a brand discussion, a little bit of digital PR discussion, and I know there has obviously been a lot of talk about the future of digital PR, the future of link building, all the changes that are happening at the moment with AI and LLMs and AI mode and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of want to get into it and dig into it with you, Abi, because I know you've been doing this for a while. I know you've recently joined Launch at time of recording as well. And I know you guys are doing some really cool stuff with kind of pushing that brand-driven side of digital PR, right? And I think that has become seems like kind of the buzzword of 2025 is that the brand is key to SEO. So I kind of want to kick things off with why you think brand is the future of digital PR. Why do you think this is a topic we should be talking about right now?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. And as you said, definitely the sort of buzzword for digital PR in 2025. I feel like last year's buzzword was maybe, relevancy. There's a lot of talk about relevancy and authenticity online. And it feels like this talk about brand is almost a continuation of that. And I think really the reason why we're talking about, relevance and sort of building a holistic brand rather than just focusing on, digital PR is this graduation from what was link building when it started out, 15, 20 years ago, however long it was now, to now coming to this whole sort of, as I say, more holistic PR strategy. So back in the day, link building, digital PR was sort of created from this need to obviously build links in order to benefit SEO. And I think over time, those sort of tactics that you are using to do that has really sort of graduated into PR strategies that traditional PRs are using in their day-to-day work as well. So I think it's about this sort of graduation of SEOs realizing that digital PR is not only great for building great links that are going to be impactful for SEO, but they're also going to, build brand awareness, and they can get a brand famous, and they can, say good stories about the brand that they are going to want to see in publications where their audiences are reading. So I think it's really interesting that we've kind of seen this graduation from quite a technical sort of tactic to, something a bit more holistic. And I think another reason why we're talking a lot about brand in 2025 is, as you mentioned, obviously AI being such a huge thing that every digital marketer, I'm sure, has on their mind in their day-to-day work. And I think as that AI technology is sort of developing and becoming more clever, it's really sort of able to see through that manipulation and actually just wants to see authentic brands who are talking about topics relevant to, what they're selling and who they're selling to. And so, I think as that AI technology sort of becomes more at the forefront of our strategies, we are going to have to really look at brand as well as just getting a link for the sake of it.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're totally right. When always like reframing it, it feels like we're coming back around to a lot of the old school methodologies, almost in a way. Like you said, like we're learning the digital PR side of things, and SEOs and digital marketers are learning from the old school PR side of things. Back in the days when it was billboards and newspapers and all that kind of stuff, right? And don't get me wrong, there is still very valid representation in print media and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I think you're right that we're almost kind of adopting and adapting a lot of those tactics and strategies that people in more traditional PR have been using for years and years. I know somebody who was on the talk sessions with you, Katie Story. I was talking to Katie about it afterwards as well. I know Katie has a pretty extensive, like, literal newsroom experience and
Yeah.
journalism experience. And I know we were talking about it afterwards as well. There was a lot of like, it feels like we're kind of going back around to a lot of the more old school stuff, and the way, exactly as you said there, that people are understanding brands online, people are seeing brands online, whether that's represented in things like Google or social media or the LLM search side of things. We're seeing a lot of it be brand awareness, reputation management, all that kind of stuff that in theory companies and brands have been doing for years using VR. And it's been a real kind of, almost like, it feels like a bit of a wake-up call and a bit of a reframing back into more traditional things now, like you said, graduating into the digital space as well. Have you felt that kind of shift happen over the last few years, where you're feeling almost like the combination of traditional and digital PR coming together a bit more?
100%, yeah. And for me personally, obviously, having just joined Launch, they are traditionally a traditional sort of PR agency. So I've spent my whole career up until sort of this year in very traditional digital agencies, so more SEO. That's so confusing, isn't it? I shouldn't get into the traditional digital thing. It just gets so confusing. But working in digital PR, SEO agencies in my career to date, and now sort of moving to a traditional PR agency, really sort of seeing that lots of traditional PR agencies are looking to incorporate digital into their strategies, making sure that their PR work is working really hard and sort of maximizing the impact of the work that they are doing. And then vice versa with sort of SEO digital PR agencies, as you say, really trying to tap into those traditional sort of tactics so that we're not only sort of getting the links that are going to benefit SEO strategy, but they're also going to really build a brand, get a brand known, and improve that brand visibility, both online, but also in the wider world as well. So I think it's really interesting, that sort of culmination of both coming together. And I know there's a lot of debate online in the LinkedIn world at the moment about whether digital PR, kind of needs this rebrand, because actually what we're doing as digital PRs, it is PR, like it is just PR sort of tactics and strategy. It's not sort of the link building digital PR that we used to do back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a big, almost like, conversation where the digital side of things almost seems second nature in a lot of ways. We are so online these days. Everything is kind of both. You will see massive marketing campaigns across, and I joked earlier, right, like newspaper and billboards and all that kind of stuff. But you will totally see a bus stop ad, and then also an Instagram ad, and then also a
Yeah.
YouTube, and then also a TikTok, and all this kind of stuff. You can integrate that so even easily, is obviously I'm oversimplifying here, but in
Yes.
theory you can combine all that stuff into the same campaign, right? And for
100%.
me, I think a lot of it, especially when you're talking about brand awareness, building brands, and there's the classic stat, and I've referenced it many times on the podcast before, the amount of touch points you see from a brand before you start interacting with them, before you start recognizing, before you purchase something from them. It used to be in the single digits. The numbers were like 7, 8, 9, something like that. And I've heard everything from like 20 to 40 in the last few
Wow.
months or so.
Wow.
Because, yeah, I think about how many times you can see, even the same Instagram ad over and over again, or the same TikTok ad, or the same X or Blue Sky or whatever it is, all the little social media things, let alone what you're seeing when we were talking just before we started recording about, you go to a news ad and a news site and you see those display ads and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is so much room for advertising now, and again, for PR in another way of outside of the paid side of things, it's that earned media side of things, right? I know we kind of separate a lot of the organic and the paid side of things, and I think for me, earned media is such a good way of framing a lot of the PR stuff, because you've really got to kind of prove yourself and
Yeah.
make sure you are saying something interesting and new and unique, and not just kind of recycling the same stuff everyone else has been saying, which I think a lot of people are guilty of, thanks to a lot of LLM stuff these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
And I think for me, there's a lot of that kind of, I guess, like looking into the future as well, but even looking into where we are now. We've recently had the launch of AI mode in the UK, right? And I'm sure you guys, when you're thinking about it in terms of your clients at launch and what you're thinking of, are you thinking outside of just the digital space? Because I think a lot of us kind of get stuck into just Google in a lot of ways. Us SEOs are very guilty of just like SEO equals Google and not thinking about anything else. Has the shift in social media and the shift in the kind of information that these, LLMs and AI kind of generated searches, their sources are now pulling from a broader range of sources as well, has that influenced your approach to it, or are you kind of already in that space where you're kind of thinking about trying to be everywhere where your audience is going to be?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that, trying to be everywhere where your audience is going to be. And I think that audience research side of it is so important. So using tools such as like SparkToro, for example, to find out where your audience is reading, what they're searching for, what they're listening to, and really trying to capture them at every touch point. So I think we're thinking a lot about that in our campaigns. And then AI, again, a bit of a buzzword, definitely something we're thinking about a lot at launch in terms of our PR and digital PR strategies. I think in a very simplified way, obviously we know that brand is going to be so important with the development of these AI tools and LLMs and stuff like that. I think it was Ahrefs who did that great study, which showed that online brand mentions are more impactful even than links when it comes to brand visibility in the AI overviews, which as someone who's been building links for the past 8 years of their career was like, wow, links aren't the top sort of dog anymore. It really is showing that brand and the sort of relevance of how that brand is being spoken about and the sentiment of that brand, how the brand is being regarded online and sort of on social media and stuff like that. It really is so important as we sort of move to this AI search world where, the clicks aren't coming through in the same way. We're not getting the same rankings we used to in traditional search. It's just a whole new sort of landscape, really. And our PR strategies obviously have to sort of adapt to move with those times. So, yeah, it's a very interesting time to be a digital PR, I would say.
Definitely, yeah. I think we're feeling it in the SEO side of things, and I think there's definitely been, like you said, a lot of discussion around a couple of topics you were there. The relevancy stuff, I think, was a big conversation, like you said, last year, and sentiment, I think, has been a big conversation as well. I kind of hinted at a little bit, and I know you've mentioned it a couple of times already, the kind of sentiment that your audience or your customers have about you as a brand or your client as a brand can make such a big difference. And exactly as you said there's been some great studies from people like Ahrefs that talk about those unlinked mentions, that even if people are talking about you And I think there was, unfortunately, it's a quote from Jeff Bezos, but, not great, but it's a good quote nonetheless, is your brand is the thing people say about you when you're not in the room. So when
I love
you
that.
are not there and that can literally be physically in a room, I did a podcast about personal branding at Brighton back in
Mhm.
April, and that was a topic that came up. But I think that is also true for bigger brands. That could be true for multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations. Sure, we all know, I mentioned Bezos there, like take Amazon or Apple or the BBC or whatever it is,
Mhm.
these huge household name type brands. Like, yeah, cool. We all know those brands. Unless your client is one of those household names, you're going to be fighting for all that coverage, fighting for the mentions, fighting for all that kind of stuff. And for me, a lot of it ends up being, and we talked a lot about, Reddit and forums and all this kind of like
Mhm.
user generated content stuff that's been happening recently.
Mhm.
You could be building all the lovely links and all that kind of stuff. But if people have had really bad experiences of saying their delivery is terrible or their customer service is awful, and
Yeah.
that's all the stuff people are talking about on forums,
Yeah.
you're really not kind of understanding the sentiment of your audience there, right? Do you kind of go in with that kind of like onboarding process with clients, thinking about where they are and what their audiences are saying about them? And I always find it funny when like a client thinks the audience thinks one thing and actually it's completely the opposite as well.
Yeah,
That's
it
always
is
fun.
funny. Yeah. I think people who work in house are obviously understandably very in touch with, the great parts of the brand and, how they're serving their customers. And that's great. But as you say, don't always have the sort of scope to look beyond that to see what other people might actually be saying about their brand, which is interesting. But yeah, we're definitely looking tactic wise at sentiment in terms of the brand, as you say. So looking at things such as, Trustpilot reviews, Google reviews, stuff like that, to see what their average sort of ratings are, if they're getting bad reviews online, because as you say, I think that is going to be affecting visibility, certainly in sort of AI search and, perhaps in traditional sort of Google search results as well. So definitely incorporating that more and more into our strategies. And I think it's quite nice because it sort of ties really nicely into that traditional PR tactic of, the almost like the crisis comms side of thing, of like building a
Yeah.
brand, the thought leadership, the sort of just going out with the brand and trying to tell a good story and get that brand known in a positive way. So I think we've seen a real return to that sort of more traditional PR strategies in order to make sure that that brand has a positive sentiment as much as possible. And I know Beth Nunnington, who is a director at Journey Further, she was talking about a similar thing on a podcast recently. And she said something about like, not all PR is good PR. And I think, back in the day, maybe all PR was good PR. But I think now, where sentiment is so important, there's so much news. So, the likelihood of you being mentioned in the first place has increased like tenfold. So you actually need to be making sure that the PR you're getting is good PR, because the bad PR in 2025, I think, can actually be really damaging, not only for your brand, but also when it comes to that visibility as well. So yeah, it's definitely something, again, we're thinking about a lot, starting to incorporate more into our strategies as the technology sort of develops.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way of reframing it. You mentioned Beth's perspective there, because like you said, it used to be the any coverage is good coverage kind of thing. It was very like the almost like pre-digital 80s and 90s kind of vibe of it all, of,
Yeah.
as long as people are talking about you, that's what matters.
Yes.
And I think you're totally right. We need to be really, really careful with that at the moment, because even simple things like taking it way back, even before print, it's word of mouth stuff, right? That is
Mhm.
how people talk about companies. Oh, there's a salesman in the town next door.
Yeah.
There's a shop run by somebody's grandma in the town, 10 miles down the road. Is it worth traveling that far to go and get their stuff? oh
Yeah.
yeah, I traveled there, we came through there, in our horse and cart.
Yeah.
I'm stretching this analogy as far as I can go.
Yeah. No, I
And
love it.
it's word of mouth stuff, right? And that
Yeah.
can be such a powerful thing even now in 2025. Word of mouth, literally between people in person, or even little things like we're talking a lot about almost the shrinking of the web as well into these little
Mm,
closed communities and stuff like that. What are people saying about you on things like Slack or Discord or WhatsApp or group
mm,
chats or whatever? All these other things that, again, it's the example of what are people saying about you when you're not in the room.
yeah.
A lot of these communities are private. They're not
Mm,
indexed by search engines. You can't, oh, what are people saying about me on Slack is not an option you can do, because Slack is a huge platform across multiple different closed and open communities. It could be women in tech SEO, it could be neurodivergence in SEO, it could be the SEO community. There's so many different ones, let alone in SEO, let alone the broader, wider side of things.
yeah.
And for me, I find that stuff really interesting when you can literally get a recommendation of, oh yeah, I've used this tool or this particular company or bought this product or service, and I'm going to recommend it to you. The
Mm,
reason I do, and obviously we'll get onto them later, recommendations on this show is
mm,
because I think it's a really relevant thing.
yeah.
We can talk. We've already mentioned a couple of tools and a couple of examples already, but I think hearing somebody actually talk about why you should care about something, even if it's not literally a word of mouth from a friend, it can be, for want of a better phrase, not to call us influencers, but
Yeah.
kind of
I'll
that
take
that kind of thing.
influencer.
I'm happy to call you an influencer, mate. Absolutely. But almost like that trusted source, right? And I
Mm,
think that is something that has been around in PR and journalism since time immemorial, since day dot, right? Like,
yeah.
it's been around for a while. And are you finding that kind of thing where you're looking for those kind of trusted sources? Is that part of that kind of audience research? You're thinking, who is talking about us, and does that matter as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, as you say, there was sort of this huge reliance on traditional media, so like newspapers, broadcast, so TV, radio, and then obviously came the online news outlets to sort of shape that public opinion about brands. But now, as you say, with influencers, social creators, and even, I guess, sort of day-to-day users on social media platforms, they are able to talk about brands, as he said. They can report on news, they can shift narratives, they can spark viral trends. So it means that brands have far, far, far less control than they once had over where and how their stories are sort of spreading. So I think that work, firstly, on the brand is definitely more vital than ever, because they don't have that same control over the narrative. They have to make sure that the sort of overall sentiment towards their brand is positive, so that if any sort of influencer, everyday user decides to talk about their brand, then hopefully, fingers crossed, that is a good thing. And then, yeah, I think it's really interesting what you say about trusted sources. I think because of the rise of social media, influencers, etc., I think there is a lot of distrust online, with people, sort of maybe flogging brands or products. I mean, good for them, get the money. But I think that leads to quite a lot of distrust with audiences. And so it really feels like there's an opportunity again via our sort of PR, digital PR strategies, to build that trust directly with the brand and the audiences through the comms that we're sort of putting out. So again, whether that's sort of, expert data stories or more traditional sort of thought leadership or commentary, I think there's definitely a sort of objective in a lot of our PR strategies in 2025 to really build that trust, as you say, with audiences, because there's just so many voices online that I think it's really hard to know who to trust and what about. So I think that authenticity is really sort of valued in all comms sort of strategies, but particularly with the sort of PR strategies, really looking to, come across as a trusted source for people.
Yeah, definitely. Authenticity was something I talked about in my SEO in 2025 tip with
Mhm.
David Bain and the guys over at Majestic, and that was definitely something I was focusing on. Was I found myself gravitating towards particular reviewers for things, or
Yeah.
particular YouTube creators or writers or whatever it is, even if it comes to it could be anything from I need to buy a new phone to who should I vote for to anything. It could be huge, impactful decisions, or just, like, what t-shirt should I buy? It could be tiny little decisions, could be big things. And I think we're definitely, you're absolutely spot on where you're thinking about the distrust that unfortunately, a lot of scandals and undisclosed advertising and all that kind of stuff that happened in the last couple of years with a lot of TikTokers getting caught out of it. And there was, I don't know if you remember when TikTok was turned off and banned in the US.
Yes.
And a bunch of influencers basically like confessed to a bunch of stuff because they thought TikTok wasn't going to exist anymore. And they're like, yeah, it turns out I've been lying. I'm not married to a billionaire. He doesn't exist. Or I've never used this product in my life, even though I've been their brand ambassador for the last 18 months. Like,
oh my God.
Why are you saying this stuff out loud? That's insane. Like, just keep quiet.
Yeah.
But you're right, that then sows the seeds of distrust, right? How much can we trust the next person who has the little paid for or sponsored by little hashtag ad or anything like that next to their name? And for me, I think I try and find as much neutrality, objectivity as I can. I think that is nigh on impossible with how human beings work and how our biases work and stuff as well. Like I said, like, I'll try and work out who I'm going to vote for next time. Like, I know my own political leanings. I'm not going to suddenly swing in a particular direction just because one YouTuber said I should, right? But I think that's also true for PR. Like, you can fight back against negative PR or negative coverage or negative comments or whatever it is, and do the opposite of that and come back with a story of like, actually, no, we have transformed this. We have improved ourselves. We've seen loads of brands, like you said, that crisis management that has been around for decades, right? Do you think there is kind of that worry, I guess, from some brands that they can't control what people are saying online? Or do you think you need to go that extra effort to find places where you can control it? Is it kind of that balancing swings and roundabout kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act. I think brands are definitely thinking more about the crisis comms side of things because there's just been so many examples of slip-ups, shall we say, that businesses and brands have sort of made over the years. And I think, what we were saying about the news sort of being able to break and spread across so many different platforms to so many people so quickly. It's not like before where a story would go out in the print newspaper the next day. It's literally, on TikTok, on the Daily Mail within minutes sometimes. So I think there's definitely a shorter sort of period for brands and sort of comms teams to respond when incidents like that happen. So I think there's definitely a side of it where brands are investing in this type of comms support because, if shit hits the fan, am I allowed to say that?
Absolutely, yeah.
If it hits the fan, they are going to need very quick action to sort of remedy that. So I think there's that side of it. And then I guess in terms of the sort of maintenance thing, I think it's just making sure that your PR strategies are very authentic. So it's a conversation we have with lots of clients around people who are working for a brand in-house. They want to talk as much as possible about the brand, about the product, about the service that they are delivering, which obviously makes total sense. And we do want to be talking about that, but not in a way that comes across as too sort of advertorial or too sort of inauthentic. We want the brands to be really serving their audiences and serving their customers. So a lot of the strategies that we build for clients are around, how can we utilize your experts to be talking about something that is actually going to help your customers. So as an example, if you own a hairdresser shop, you might not want to be talking about the best hairdressers in London with your hairdressing salon being number one on that list because people will see through that and that comes across as quite inauthentic. However, if you are a hairdressing salon and you utilize one of your stylists and you give out some commentary on how to approach silent appointments, because we've seen this rise in people who don't want to talk in their hair salon appointments, or, these are the trending hairstyles for 2025, like things that, people who are going to hair appointments are actually looking and searching for, then that's going to come across as way more sort of authentic and a brand that people want to sort of invest in than just sort of flogging your products on the web. So yeah, I think it's kind of that balancing act, as you say, of the sort of maintenance work of building that brand, building that trust, building that authenticity, all the buzzwords, but then also making sure that you've got a strategy in place should anything bad happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're spot on with a lot of the virality and trending side of things. We know, obviously, talk a lot about newsjacking, which again was one of the sessions in the talks at Brighton SEO, and there was a lot of kind of discussion around how to be quick and reactive with a lot of PR stuff. And I think there is also the polar opposite of that is a very planned, meticulous campaign side of things. I think a lot of brands, from my experience, can kind of get caught up in one strategy or the other and not really kind of have a full idea of the coverage, if that makes sense. Have you found that kind of similar thing where, there's kind of common mistakes that brands get stuck into if they overcommit to a particular tactic or a particular strategy and aren't paying attention to either, invest loads in one big campaign and don't look at the news that's going on, or focus so specifically on the news they don't really have anything else to say? Have you found that kind of thing when you're having conversations with those brands of, you need to be thinking about the broader picture and kind of the overall, like we said, coverage as a whole and PR as a whole, rather than just a single little piece of the pie?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think it's what I like about digital PR is that it's so holistic. So you kind of have that brand element of, okay, what do you want your brand to be famous for? These three things. What are the topics within these three things that we should then be talking about in order to get your brand famous for those things? So I think then really working out, okay, is floating it down the Thames going to achieve those goals of making your brand famous for this thing? If not, then maybe we shouldn't float it down the Thames. PR tip, never float it down the Thames, regardless of but just as an example. So I think there's that side of it that we definitely consider, and as you say, have to have those conversations with clients. But then I think it's also then weaving in the SEO side of things. So thinking about, where do we actually want to be getting links from? What links are going to be impactful for your visibility? So really weaving in, okay, is this story going to land coverage and links on Ideal Home, which would be a great publication to get your company sort of featured in and get a link from, because it's really relevant. It's where your customers are reading day in, day out. And, it's a high authority publication that a link from is only going to benefit your backlink profile. So I really like that it has the sort of two elements of strategy of, yes, we obviously need to be thinking a lot about what's going to work well for the brand and why we want to be, getting that coverage for the brand, but also then looping in, what's important from an SEO perspective, and using that to guide the overall strategy is quite satisfying, I find.
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it there, where you have that incredibly important question of, what do you want to be known for? Right. And I think I'm having that initial kind of conversation with a client is always so interesting to me. I had an SEO example of this, funny enough, where it was an e-commerce client I was working with a few years ago. I was like, okay, what the equivalent of that was like, what do you want to rank for? What do you want to be known for? When people search for things, what do you want to appear for?
Yeah.
And they had a couple of examples of, they worked in sort of like dried flowers and artificial flowers and a lot of that kind of stuff. And we were talking to them, okay, what are the kind of phrases you think your customers use? Because again, I use dried and artificial there. Some people assume they're the same thing if they're not particularly educated, or, depending on the audience's level of education on the subject, you can come in with all kinds of different things. I was like, okay, do you want to be known for artificial or dried or both or variations thereupon? And they had a few different ideas. I was like, well, you don't mention any of those on your homepage. It just says, we are blah, 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 and we do this, this, and this. But you don't talk about the thing apparently that you see as your key USP and your key, thing you want to be known for. I was like, well, if you want to be known for it, you need to talk about it. And that includes on your own website. That includes in social media. That includes PR and coverage and articles and all this kind of stuff on your blog. Like you mentioned earlier, Abby, do thought leadership type stuff where you're talking about this subject. And I found it so fascinating that it was such a eye-opening experience for them to be like, oh yeah, of course, we want to be known for this thing. Let's talk about the thing. Like, yeah, that's exactly how topical experts are born. That's how thought
Yeah.
leadership is created, right? And I think that is such an important step to have with even tiny brands, even tiny
Mm,
little startups and tiny little business. This example, there were, less than 10 people total in the company. Like, it was a very small family run business and things like that. And I
mm,
was talking to them for a while and having that conversation of, okay, so now we're known for this thing, we're ranking for this thing, then we talk about PR coverage, obviously working with the PR team here at Candour and going through that process as well. I was like,
mm,
okay, cool. Now we're kind of getting somewhere. We're trying to understand what the landscape of this industry is and where you fit within that landscape. And I think if you don't have that conversation, and like you said, you just kind of, you do the bad side of it, you go in with just like, here's all of my ideas and tactics, so you just kind of steamroll over that. Like, no, you need to really kind of set the foundations first, especially as you said earlier about that sentiment side of things. Understand not only what you want to be known for, but what people are saying about you already, and
yeah.
what you want people to be saying about you can be three completely different things.
Yeah.
And trying to align all of those things to say, okay, this is what you're talking about, this is what people are talking about you, and how you can help kind of guide people through that process. What would be kind of those pieces of advice, I guess, you give somebody who is starting out in digital PR? And, you know, good luck to you people if you're starting in 2025. Like, it's a tumultuous time to join the industry.
Yeah.
But what would kind of be your advice to somebody starting out? What would be those kind of initial thoughts, conversations, and processes you should be starting with?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely hold on to your hats. It's the first piece of advice I'd give. No, one thing I love about digital PR is that it's really scalable. So I think it is really sort of doable for small businesses, startups, to start digital PR with those sort of limited budgets, which I think is great. And I think one really easy way to start doing digital PR and start building that brand is kind of what I was saying before about utilizing your experts. So I really think having a think, firstly, I guess, as we say, what do you want to be known for, and kind of noting down those sort of key pillars that your brand wants to be famous for. And then really having a think about, okay, how can we utilize our experts to basically reveal advice, stories that might be of interest to both journalists and consumers. So, as an example, if you are a small plumbing business, you want to be famous for your exceptional plumbing services and you make plumbing really easy, or whatever that sort of overall North Star goal is, you then want to be thinking about how you can be utilizing your experts within that plumbing business. So, are you, for example, advising consumers on the best date to turn on or off their central heating as the seasons change, and sort of giving the sort of insight behind that and why people should be, turning their heating on September the 7th versus September the 22nd? Could it be something around, the cost of living crisis? Consumers are getting more and more worried about spending money on heating, and, should they be re-looking at their plumbing sort of situation in order to save money? So really sort of thinking about how you can share that expertise that you have within your business in order to serve consumers, and therefore that is going to be a story that's of interest for journalists, and then that is going to be the story that's sort of covered and linked back to. So I think that's probably a good place to start. And obviously, to do full scale digital PR strategies, yes, you might need tools, you might need collaborating teams to come up with big creative ideas. But actually, those sort of really easy, free, quick to pull together commentary that's actually going to be genuinely useful for your audiences is just as effective sometimes as the sort of big, flashy, creative floated down the Thames stories. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And it comes back around to what we we're saying at the beginning of the episode, right? Like, a lot of those traditional strategies are now coming back around, and you don't necessarily need to do the biggest, craziest, flashiest thing, the float them down the Thames strategy. But I think a lot of people like almost like get that little sparkle in their eye of like, oh, we could do something big and crazy and put half of our budget into this one campaign. It's like, whoa, 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 hold on. Let's walk before we can run, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's see where we are and kind of understand the landscape of the industry or your niche or whatever it is, to kind of understand what you need to do to grow. I think a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people talking in the industry recently of like you said, that relevancy, that sentiment, the brand kind of things is becoming more and more important than ever. And I find myself becoming more loyal to particular brands. Oh, I know that these guys, but for reference, I have size 13 feet. It's a kind of awkwardy size where it's not quite big that I can't get them in shops, but not every shop is going to have size 13. So
Yeah.
I've learned particular shoe brands that do a size 13 that I know I can reliably go to. And you would never get that from a audience research tool. Like, oh, this guy who does podcasts has size 30 feet. Now you will. I've said it out loud on the podcast. But it can be tiny little things like that. I was like, okay, I know that this brand does a particular, trainer that I like that is particularly comfortable. So I will always just go to them because I know it fits my feet and I know it will work for me. And that can be true for everything from washing up liquid to clothes to even working with agencies, right? You pick an agency and you understand their brand. But a big part of this podcast is growing the brand of Candour. And the reason I bring guests like yourself on, you are highlighting Launch as a brand as well, right? There is a whole part of this where us talking about it, you are a subject expert on this topic right now. That is exactly why you're here, Abby. Like, we're doing it right now, right? There is an element there of, okay, some Search with Candour listeners and viewers will be interested in seeing what Launch is doing now. So you might get some more, maybe not clicks, maybe not customers, but you'll get that brand awareness. Maybe you will get customers, who knows? But I like that kind of era win at the moment, which feels kind of accessible in a lot of ways. And like, whether it's podcasts or YouTube or social media or all these other places, there are so many different ways to get your voice heard, right? And I think something I talked about a little while ago with Harry Evans was like getting video out there and putting a face to a brand can be such a big part of, oh yeah, actually, yeah, Jack is a human being. Candour isn't just this kind of conglomerate mush of SEOs and designers and web developers. There are actual people there. And we're trying to do that a lot here at Candour, is kind of highlight the people behind the brand, behind the name. And I know a lot of people kind of struggle with that a lot, right? I think a lot of people struggle with that. And especially when you have to have that conversation with the bosses. I know this is going to be a very difficult question, is how do you measure the success or the metrics of brand awareness and brand building? How do you have those conversations with the stakeholders and the C-suites and stuff like that when you kind of have to explain, as I said then, you might not get new customers, you might not make that much money, but brand awareness, you're like, okay, yeah. How do you kind of have that approach when you're talking to clients or talking to, the CEO of a company or something like that and saying brand is where it's at and this is why it's important? How do you measure that kind of success?
Yes. Yeah. A really tricky question, as you say. But
no, sorry, mate.
Definitely all good. There's definitely ways to measure it. So that's good. I think with digital PR campaigns that kind of focused on that brand building, links are still very important in terms of showing that ROI, because they are that sort of really tangible signal to Google and also to audiences, I think, of trust in a brand. Like if a publication is linked to your brand, then that is showing positive sentiment towards that brand. So I think that definitely is something, I mean, obviously we would report on it for SEO purposes anyway, but I think in terms of looking at the overall sort of brand sort of features within the coverage that we're getting, we definitely look as links as one of those metrics. I think brand mentions are obviously becoming more and more important. They've been, known as a hint, I think it is, to Google for years now. But I think, as we were saying, with the development of AI technology, the sort of sentiment around that brand and sort of how the brand is being talked about within that coverage, even things like the placement of the mention. So is it in the headline, for example, or the opening line of a feature, or is it buried at the bottom of a piece? In terms of sentiment, obviously, positive versus negative, but then does it include key messaging around the brand? So, sort of emulating the messaging that your brand would use within that feature. That's obviously quite tricky to get sometimes, but does happen in brilliant pieces of coverage. And then I guess looking sort of slightly wider than that, looking at brand searches as well. So are they increasing off the back of your digital PR campaigns, your digital PR work? You can conduct consumer surveys to show that people are recognizing your brand more, how they feel about your brand. So I think there's lots of different ways to measure it. But I think when it comes to, pieces of coverage by pieces of coverage, really looking at the links, the brand mention, and then the sort of sentiment and placement are probably three sort of key things I would probably look at.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that broader approach to it, where you can kind of get an idea of, like we said, what people are saying about you, right? Like there is an element there of seeing where it is actually placed. Are people actually reading that article? How many hits has that article had?
Yeah.
What kind of audience does that publication have? Hopefully that's already part of your digital PR strategy, for the record. But
yeah.
understanding that, where you can see, even a conversation I had a couple of years ago with Alex Hixon-Burr, like there was a getting out of your brand bubble, getting out of your little kind of like constrained thing, and thinking about, you can target national coverage and all that kind of stuff. What's the likely conversion rate? What's the audience crossover of the BBC, the Sun, the Daily, whatever it is, compared to your niche magazine.co.uk or whatever, like that kind of thing, can make such a big difference, where it's like 90% of these people are probably interested in this client, compared to 1-2% of the readers of that other article that's been covered in a much bigger publication. Of course, you can do the maths and kind of weigh the numbers and stuff like that, right? Is it better to get that broader coverage there? And I think you're totally right as well. Links are still very relevant. We are not saying links are dead. It's not the classic
Absolutely
SEO is
not.
dead every few months kind of thing.
Yeah.
Links are still massively relevant and still a huge signal for both AI side of search and the more traditional side. Again, using the word traditional, the 10 blue links, Google, Bing, etc., kind of old school search engines. Links still matter and are still relevant and are still essentially that sign of trust, right? It is another site vouching for you as a source, as a topic expert, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
It's the word of mouth of the internet in a really weird way of kind of oversimplifying.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And I think we talk a lot about, if Google didn't exist, if there were no links to be built, which is a life with a lot less purpose for me. But if Google didn't exist, would you still want that coverage? Like, would it feel relevant? Would it, appear on a publication that your audience is going to be reading? Because if the answer is yes, then that is a good piece of digital PR coverage. I know we had the whole thing a few years back where there was lots of sort of brands doing digital PR, some in the sort of gambling casino-y space, who are talking about, advice on how to tackle the pollen season and sort of tackle allergies. And it just, if that link wasn't there, it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, at least, to have that coverage, that brand talking about that topic in a piece of coverage. And so I think it's just thinking about that when it comes to, why are we doing that story? What publications are we reaching out to? Because if the links weren't a thing, where actually makes the most sense for your brand to be appearing on?
Yeah, definitely. And I've got another tough question for you. I'm sorry, mate. I'm gonna head towards the end here with some tough questions.
Do it.
If you were thinking, and we're projecting and predicting over the next couple of years, like I said, AI mode has launched here in the UK, it's in the US, it's in India. We've seen the growth of ChatGPT search and Perplexity and all this kind of stuff. Where do you see digital PR in 18 months from now, and then 3 or 4 years from now? How much is going to change? Do you think we'll still be in this kind of feels like it's changing every couple of weeks kind of thing, or will it be a bit more settled into a new normal that is much more LLM driven? Or I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. A very tricky question. And without being a fortune teller, I can't say for sure. But what I do think, or what I know to be true, certainly in the last, coming up to a decade of working in SEO, is that things always are changing. Like, we had the whole voice search thing that I remember when I joined one particular agency, it was like, oh my God, this is going to be the future of search. Like, how are we going to get our PR strategies and, voice search results? That didn't end up being a thing. I don't think that is going to be the same with AI. I think that's definitely here to stay for sure, and will only get bigger and bigger, and a sort of a bigger part of our digital marketing strategies. But I definitely think in terms of digital PR, we will get to this place where it's not digital PR and PR, it's one overarching holistic strategy where we are thinking about the brand, we are incorporating sort of the SEO and link building insight into this, but ultimately we are looking to create online strategies that are really sort of building that brand, getting that brand famous for things that they want to be known for. So I don't think that they will sit in separate silos in the future. I do think that it will sort of amalgamate, because we are at the end of the day doing the exact same thing, more or less, just with sort of varying levels of SEO insight behind it. So I think that will be a really interesting and positive shift, because I think one of the great things that digital PRs have been banging the drum about for years is that digital PR is great because you get all of these traditional PR benefits of brand building, brand sentiment, getting your brand famous and out there and seen by the world. But you also have this sort of added element of, okay, well, the coverage that we're building is actually going to increase your organic visibility. It's going to drive clicks to your website. It could literally convert customers from one piece of coverage. So I think being able to shout about that more and have more people, I guess, working their PR strategies really hard and actually getting tangible results from it, I think can only be a good thing, because we're all doing the same work to get to the PR ideas in the first place. So we should really, I think, be working them, pretty hard. So that's my 100%. Prediction.
I appreciate you going out and predicting them. I appreciate it. Putting it on the line and sticking your neck out.
First, we'll see. We'll see.
Exactly. We'll do another episode in a year's time, and we'll catch up and see what's come true.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds like a plan.
And let's finish things off with some recommendations, as we do every single episode. And I'll kick things off as I always do. What is one actionable tip you'd recommend viewers and listeners to start doing right now, Abi?
I think have a think about what you want your business to be famous for. Write down 3 core messages or themes that kind of align with that, and then use them as a checklist before you're sort of posting, pitching, speaking anywhere, and use that to refer to make sure that you are totally aligned with sort of that vision for getting your brand out there and making them famous.
Nice. Like we said, I feel that is a foundation of a lot of PR strategies, so always a good place to start.
Yeah.
Next up, we mentioned a couple of tools so far, but is there something you'd like to recommend, piece of software, whatever it is, that you think maybe people aren't using enough and aren't paying enough attention to?
Yes, so there is a tool that I have also recently discovered, which is called Contagious AI. And it's basically a publication, I guess, or a tool that rounds up lots of famous marketing and PR campaigns, but basically goes into the insight into what the challenge was for the brand, what they were trying to achieve. It also categorizes each campaign by sector. So it's really useful if you're trying to come up with PR campaigns and ideas for clients in specific sectors. And they also do interviews sometimes with the sort of brains behind the PR ideas, sort of going through, what didn't make the cut, how did you come to this idea, and what were the results? So yeah, it's kind of a one-stop shop for any digital PR, I would say, but a really great tool that I would recommend.
Awesome. Definitely highlight that. And last but not least, what have you been enjoying recently? Doesn't even have to be work related. If you've seen a film, watched a show, read a book, played a game, listened to a podcast, what have you been enjoying recently, Abi? What can you recommend people?
Nice. So I have quite an ambitious reading goal this year. I'm trying to read 50 books this year.
Nice.
So I've been trying to get my head into a book whenever I can. And I've just recently finished I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. It's a science fiction novel, I think written in 1995, and it's, without giving too much away, it's about a woman who is kept in a cage underground with 39 other females. So yeah, no more spoilers than that, but I'd heard a lot about it and wasn't disappointed. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since, so would recommend that.
Very cool. Very cool. I always appreciate interesting, ambitious reading goals. I know a
Yes.
lot of people, a lot of friends are like trying to get into like, oh, I need to keep my Goodreads wish list updated and get all that stuff. I tried to do that and I've fallen off well and truly so far. I've been trying to get back into it and read a bit more. And yeah, definitely check that out. I'm big,
Yeah.
like thoughtful existential sci-fi kind of thing is
Yeah.
my jam. So I'm
Oh,
I'm
perfect.
already intrigued.
Yeah. I'd recommend highly then.
Awesome. And last but not least, where can people find you, Abby? Where can people follow you and your digital PR knowledge and what you guys are doing at launch as well?
Yes, so you can follow me on LinkedIn, Abi Bennetts on LinkedIn, and you can check out Launch at launchpr.co.uk on our website too.
Awesome. Thank you much for coming on, mate. I really, really appreciate it. It's been lovely to catch up after our little chat at Brighton, and hopefully I'll see you again at Brighton in a few weeks as well.
Yes, see you there. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great to chat.
And that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you once again to Abby for joining me, and thank you for watching or listening. Like I said at the start of the show, if you are celebrating, Merry Christmas. Hopefully you're enjoying the final couple of weeks of 2025. If you're not celebrating, at least get a break. Go and chill out and listen to some podcasts and play some board games and have some fun. Hang out with friends and family. Do the things you love doing. I've got a lot of films and video games and board games to catch up on, and me and my partner will be spending some nice, basically some chill out days, basically just relaxing, going around, exploring parts of England I've not really been to before, and traveling around Norfolk and all that kind of stuff, and seeing my family for the first time in a while as well, which is very, very nice. So if you're not already, enjoy the last couple of weeks of 2025. Stay tuned for what we've got planned in 2026. And until then, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next week.